My name is Mark, and I'm 55 years old. I'm the proud owner of a garage that I built with my own two hands, quite literally. There's nothing fancy about it, just a workshop full of tools and the sound of hard work. But it's mine, and it's special because I made it from scratch. Every brick, every beam, every drop of sweat that went into it belongs to me. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was just an 18-year-old kid when I first started working. Fresh out of high school with no college prospects, I went to work for my uncle, a tough old mechanic who taught me everything I know. He wasn't an easy man to work for. No pats on the back, no good job, kid. Just long hours, greasy hands, and an occasional grunt of approval when I did something right. But I didn't mind. I knew I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I could work hard. And I did. For 7 years, I saved every penny I could. Skipping lunches, wearing the same old clothes, even saying no to nights out with friends, all so I could one day open my own shop. By the time I was 25, I had enough saved to finally make that dream a reality. I rented a small space, bought some used tools, and got to work. Those first few years were rough. I remember sleeping on the cold concrete floor of that garage more times than I cared to admit. There were weeks when I barely made enough to cover the rent, but giving up? That was never an option. Slowly but surely, things started to change. Word got around that Mark was the guy you could trust with your car. It wasn't long before I had regular customers. Over the years, my little shop grew. I bought better tools, hired a few guys to help out, and eventually moved into a bigger space. Now, 3 decades later, that garage is more than just a business. It's a part of me. I've never been one for big titles or higher education, but that garage, it's proof that hard work and determination can take you places, even without a fancy degree. You might think I'm bragging, but I'm not. I just want you to know where I come from. Everything I have, I earned. Nothing was handed to me. And maybe that's why what happened later cut so deep, because I built my life on loyalty, on trust. And when that trust was broken, well, it changed everything. Life wasn't all about work, though. Somewhere along the way, I managed to fall in love. Her name was Lisa, and I still remember the day I met her like it was yesterday. It was at an auto show. Cars and engines everywhere, but all I could see was her. She had this way about her, smart and confident, but not in a way that made you feel small. She was a university student at the time, full of ambition and big dreams. We struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, we were exchanging phone numbers. That was just the beginning. You see, we lived in different cities, so most of our relationship in the early days was built over phone calls. Long late-night calls where we'd talk about everything under the sun. Her classes, my work, our dreams for the future. It wasn't easy, but something about her made it worth every mile and every minute. We met up again a few months later, this time at my place. It was one of those visits where everything just clicks. You know, where you feel like you've known the person your whole life. Lisa wasn't just smart and ambitious. She was kind, too. That was the moment I knew she was the one. And when life threw her a curveball, it only made my feelings for her stronger. Her parents passed away unexpectedly during her time at university. It hit her hard, and for a while, it seemed like she might have to drop out. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I gave her everything I had saved, enough to keep her in school. She cried when I handed her the money. Tears of gratitude, she said. But for me, it was just what needed to be done. When you love someone, you don't count the cost. After she graduated, Lisa moved to my city and found a job as a lawyer. She worked hard, and I couldn't have been prouder. A few years later, on a sunny Sunday hike, she surprised me by proposing at the top of a hill. I laughed, said yes, and 3 weeks later, we had the simplest, most beautiful wedding. She gave me a ring and told me, "From this day forward, you're mine forever." I believed her. Fast forward a few years, and we had 2 amazing kids, Emma and Lucas. Emma's 19 now, finishing her studies at university, And Lucas, at 18, is living his dream as the lead guitarist in a local rock band. They both took after their mother in so many ways. Smart, driven, and ready to take on the world. Watching them grow up was one of the greatest joys of my life. When they both left home, I felt this strange mix of emotions. On one hand, I was proud. They were out there, making their own way. But on the other hand, the house felt emptier, quieter. Lisa and I settled into this new phase of life together, just the two of us. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, I see now that those years, raising a family, building a life with Lisa, were the best of my life. I was content, fulfilled. Sure, I didn't have a fancy title or a high-powered job, but I had a family that loved me and a garage that I'd built with my own two hands. That was enough for me. Or so I thought. What I didn't know was that while I was basking in the glow of our family's success, Lisa's priorities were shifting. And those shifts, they would turn my world upside down. Things started changing with Lisa when she took that new job. At first, I thought it was a good move for her. She was excited about the position, talking about the opportunities it would bring, the doors it would open. Her boss, Adam Blake, was some big-shot lawyer with a reputation for winning tough cases and rubbing elbows with high society. She admired him, or at least that's what she said in the beginning. At first, I didn't notice the changes. They were small, gradual. A new wardrobe here, more late nights at work there. She started using words like networking and social ladder in conversations that used to be about family dinners and weekend plans. I chalked it up to her career. After all, she was ambitious, and I respected that. But then it became harder to ignore. Her phone was always buzzing, but she'd lock the screen the moment I glanced over. She'd come home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers and wine she didn't drink. When I asked her about it, she'd brush me off with a tired smile and a vague excuse about client meetings or office work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the woman who used to light up when she walked into the garage, grease on my hands and all, now barely looked me in the eye. The breaking point came after months of this. One night, she walked in well past midnight. Her hair was perfectly done, her makeup fresh, not the look of someone who just wrapped up a long day at the office. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted her, demanded to know what was going on. For a moment, she stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Then she broke down. Tears streaming down her face, she confessed. She admitted to having an affair, with Adam Blake of all people. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. She tried to justify it, saying she'd been feeling neglected, saying I didn't understand her world anymore. But then she said the words that cut deeper than anything else. "You're not the kind of man I can take to those parties, Mark. You don't fit in." Not the kind of man. That's what she said. The same man who stood by her when her parents died. The man who emptied his savings so she could finish school. The man who raised 2 kids and built a life with her. Suddenly, I wasn't enough. She went on about how Adam was alpha and how I wasn't. That I was too simple, too content, too set in my ways. "You don't push me, Mark," she said. "You don't take charge. You just let me lead." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For 20 years, I thought we were building a life together, as equals. But here she was, telling me that wasn't what she wanted anymore. She wanted a man who could dominate a room, someone she could show off at her fancy parties. And in her eyes, that man wasn't me. I asked her why she stayed so long if she felt this way. She didn't have an answer. Or maybe she did, but she didn't want to say it out loud. I stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, and realized I didn't know her at all. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything. Her words, her actions, the way she looked at me like I was a relic from a past she wanted to forget. I felt anger, sure, but more than that, I felt empty. Like everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, didn't matter anymore. She ended that conversation by telling me she wanted a divorce. Not a discussion, not an attempt to fix things, just a cold, hard statement. She didn't stop there. She told me she'd take the house, the money, even the garage if I didn't go along with her terms. "I have Adam's lawyers behind me," she said, like that was supposed to scare me. It didn't, not yet anyway. But as I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, I realized that the life I thought I knew was over. And the woman sleeping in the next room wasn't my Lisa anymore. The days following Lisa's confession were some of the longest of my life. I could barely look at her without replaying her words in my head. "You're not the kind of man I can take to those parties." Every time I thought about it, my chest tightened. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete dismissal of everything I had ever been to her. Lisa didn't seem to care about how much she'd hurt me. In fact, she became bolder. She stopped pretending to work late and started flaunting her relationship with Adam in subtle ways. A new necklace here, a new handbag there. All gifts from him, I figured. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And why would she? She thought she had the upper hand. Then came the threats. Lisa told me straight to my face that if I didn't agree to her terms for the divorce, she'd take me to court and leave me with nothing. "Adam has the best lawyers," she said. "They'll bury you, Mark." She wasn't just talking about taking the house and the money. She wanted my garage too. The place I had built with my own hands. The one thing I had left that was truly mine. I didn't respond. I just listened, nodded, and let her think I was caving in. But inside, I was boiling. I wasn't about to let her and her smug boyfriend take away everything I'd worked for. Not without a fight. And then, as if the universe decided I hadn't been humiliated enough, Adam himself showed up at my garage. It was a quiet afternoon, and I was working on an old pickup when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around, and there he was. Adam Blake in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mark, isn't it?" he said like he didn't already know. "Mind if I come in?" I wiped my hands on a rag and gestured for him to go ahead. He walked in like he owned the place, setting his leather briefcase on the nearest workbench. "I'm sure Lisa's already told you about our arrangement," he began, leaning against the bench like we were old friends. "I thought it might be helpful for us to talk man to man." Man to man. The irony of those words almost made me laugh. He went on to explain how things were going to work. Lisa and he would continue their relationship, and I would step aside gracefully. "Why complicate things, Mark?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You'll come out of this with something, if you cooperate." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "This is a petition for divorce," he said, sliding it toward me. "Lisa's already signed it. Here's an order to freeze your company's finances until the settlement is finalized. Oh, and these are restraining orders to keep you away from Lisa, me, and our workplace." He smiled like he'd just done me a favor. "You're not going to win this, Mark. You don't have the resources. You don't have the connections. All you're doing by resisting is delaying the inevitable." For a moment, I just stood there staring at him. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I kept it in check. "Are you done?" I finally asked. Adam raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "I asked if you're done," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Because if you are, you can take your papers, your briefcase, and your smug little speech and get out of my garage." He laughed, a low, mocking chuckle. "You don't get it, do you? I'm offering you an easy way out, Mark. You should be thanking me." That was it. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to let this man, or anyone, take what was mine. But I didn't show it. Not yet. I just smiled, wiped my hands on my rag, and said, "Well, Adam, you've given me a lot to think about." He smirked, clearly thinking he'd won. "Good. Take your time. But don't take too long. My patience has limits." As he walked out of my garage, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let him or Lisa destroy me. They thought they had me cornered, but they didn't realize something important. I might not wear a suit, and I might not have a law degree, but I wasn't someone you could push around. They were about to find out exactly who they were dealing with. I'm not a violent man by nature. Never have been. But there's something about being pushed too far, being disrespected in your own space, that flips a switch you didn't even know you had. That's what Adam Blake did when he walked into my garage that day. He flipped my switch. After he left, I sat there for a while, trying to cool down. My hands were trembling, and my heart was pounding like a jackhammer. I kept replaying his words in my head. You don't get it, do you? The arrogance, the condescension, it was unbearable. He thought he could waltz in here, throw around some legal jargon, and scare me into submission. But he didn't know me. Not really. The next day, Adam came back. I was in the middle of replacing a carburetor when I saw his shiny car pull up. He stepped out, wearing another one of those overpriced suits, carrying his briefcase like it was some kind of weapon. He didn't ask to come in this time, just strutted right into my workshop like he owned the place. "Mark," he said, flashing that smug smile of his. "Have you had time to think about our conversation?" I put down my tools and turned to face him. "I have," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "And I've got something to show you." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What's that?" I didn't say a word. I just stepped forward and planted my right fist squarely in his face. There was a sickening crunch as my knuckles connected with his nose, and Adam stumbled backward, clutching his face. His briefcase hit the floor with a thud, paper spilling out everywhere. "Consider that illustration number 1, I said, my voice calm but firm. Adam tried to say something, but the words didn't come out. Instead, he groaned in pain, blood dripping from his nose onto the concrete floor. I grabbed him by the collar, yanked him to his feet, and drove an uppercut into his gut. He doubled over, gasping for air, and collapsed onto his side. "That's illustration number 2, I continued. "You wanted to talk man to man? Well, this is how men like me settle things." He was struggling to breathe, his face twisted in pain, but I wasn't done yet. I stepped on his outstretched hand with my steel-capped boot, feeling the bones crack beneath the weight. Adam let out a scream that echoed through the garage. "Now that's illustration number 3, I said, leaning down so he could see the fire in my eyes. "You come into my garage, my territory, and you think you can talk down to me? Threaten me? You don't know who you're messing with." By this point, Adam was whimpering like a wounded animal, clutching his broken hand. But I wasn't just trying to hurt him. I wanted him to understand. I crouched down next to him, grabbed him by the tie, and said, "You think being an alpha male is about suits and money? About scaring people with legal threats? Let me educate you, Adam." I tightened my grip on his tie, pulling him closer. An alpha male doesn't need to talk about being in charge. He just is. He protects what's his, fights for it if he has to. And if you think you can push a man like me around, then you're not an alpha. You're a fool. I let go of his tie and he crumpled to the floor like a rag doll. For a moment, I just stood there, looking down at him. He was a pathetic sight, his once pristine suit now smeared with blood and grease. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You've got 2 choices, I said, stepping back. You can walk out of here and pretend this never happened, or you can try to press charges and see how that works out for you. Either way, you're done with Lisa. You hear me? Done." Adam didn't respond. He just lay there, moaning softly. I turned around, picked up his briefcase, and tossed it out the door. "Get out of my garage," I said, my voice cold and steady. He staggered to his feet, clutching his ribs, and limped toward the door. Before he left, he turned to look at me, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and disbelief. "You'll regret this," he muttered, his voice shaky. I smiled, wiping my hands on my rag. "I doubt it." As I watched him drive away, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had taken back control. Adam thought he could intimidate me, but he learned the hard way that I'm not a man you can push around. Not in my garage. Not in my life. The aftermath of that encounter with Adam was almost satisfying. I expected him to come back with a vengeance, maybe show up with the police or one of his fancy lawyers, but he didn't. Not a word, not a letter, nothing. It seemed the so-called alpha male had learned his lesson. But the fallout for Lisa? That came quicker than I thought. The first sign of trouble was when Lisa came home from work looking rattled. She didn't say anything, but I noticed the tension in her shoulders and the way she avoided eye contact. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone, whispering furiously. "What do you mean I've been terminated?" she hissed. "You can't just fire me. I've been with this firm for years." I didn't need to hear the rest to know what had happened. Adam must have realized that keeping Lisa around wasn't worth the risk. Maybe he was afraid I'd go after him again, or maybe he just wanted to cut his losses. Either way, Lisa was out of a job. When she hung up, she stormed into the living room, her face red with anger. "This is your fault, Mark," she spat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I looked up from my newspaper, calm as ever. "Me? I didn't do anything. You're the one who made your choices, Lisa. Don't try to pin this on me." She opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, like she was starting to realize just how badly she'd messed up. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The next few days were a whirlwind of chaos for Lisa. She tried to reach out to Adam, but he wasn't answering her calls. She tried to use our joint accounts to cover her expenses, only to find that I'd already taken precautions to secure our finances. Every time she hit a wall, her frustration grew, and it wasn't long before she started to unravel. Our kids, Emma and Lucas, got wind of what was happening, and they weren't pleased. Emma called me one evening, her voice filled with concern. "Dad, is it true what Mom did?" she asked. I didn't lie to her. I told her the truth, about the affair, the threats, and everything in between. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she said softly. "I can't believe she would do this to you." Lucas, on the other hand, was furious. "She doesn't deserve you, Dad," he said. "You've always been there for us, for her. If she can't see that, then that's on her." Their reactions hit Lisa harder than anything else. She tried to defend herself, saying she was only looking out for her own happiness, but neither of them bought it. For the first time in her life, she found herself alone. Not just physically, but emotionally. One evening, she sat across from me at the dinner table, her eyes hollow and tired. "Mark," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Can we talk?" I set down my fork and leaned back in my chair. "Talk about what?" "About us, about fixing this." I stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for any sign of the woman I once loved. But all I saw was regret, not for what she'd done, but for how it had backfired. "There is no us anymore, Lisa," I said finally. "You made sure of that." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't the same man she thought she could manipulate. "You betrayed me, Lisa. You betrayed our family. And for what? For some fleeting thrill with a man who didn't even stick around to back you up?" She didn't have an answer. She just sat there, staring at her plate, the weight of her choices finally sinking in. The next day, Lisa packed her bags and left. She tried to contact the kids, but they weren't ready to forgive her. She tried to reach out to friends, but word had already spread about what happened, and most of them sided with me. She was truly alone. As for me, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, relief. Losing Lisa wasn't easy, but keeping her would have been harder. I'd spent so many years building a life for us, for our family, only to realize that she didn't value it the way I did. And while it hurt, I knew I'd made the right choice. Lisa had fallen, not because of me, but because of her own decisions. And as much as it pained me to see the woman I once loved in such a state, I couldn't save her. She had to face the consequences of her actions, just like the rest of us. After Lisa left, I sat alone in the house that used to be filled with laughter, arguments, and the everyday chaos of family life. The silence was deafening at first, like an echo of everything I had lost. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to see that silence in a new light. Not as emptiness, but as peace. For the first time in a long time, I was in control of my life, my choices, and my future. The first thing I did was secure what mattered most to me: my garage. Lisa had threatened to take it in the divorce, but I wasn't about to let that happen. I consulted a lawyer, someone who understood the value of hard work and wasn't intimidated by Adam's so-called legal team. Together, we built a case to protect my business and my livelihood. It wasn't easy, but I fought like hell, and in the end, I won. The garage remained mine, a testament to decades of sweat and determination. With the legal battles out of the way, I turned my attention to the house. It was a place filled with memories, both good and bad. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay. But then I realized that this was my home. Not Lisa's, not Adam's, not anyone else's. So I started making changes. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and cleared out anything that reminded me of her. It was like shedding old skin, a way to reclaim the space as my own. The hardest part was explaining everything to Emma and Lucas. They were old enough to understand, but young enough to still feel the sting of their mother's betrayal. We had long talks, just the three of us, where I reassured them that none of this was their fault. I told them that no matter what, I would always be there for them. And in return, they showed me a kind of support I never expected. Emma started calling me every day just to check in, and Lucas even stopped by the garage to help out when he wasn't rehearsing with his band. Their love and loyalty gave me strength. It reminded me that while I had lost a partner, I still had my family. And for that, I was grateful. But the biggest change was within myself. For years, I had lived my life for others, providing for Lisa, raising the kids, building a business that could support us all. Now, for the first time, I was living for me. I started taking better care of myself, both physically and mentally. I joined a local gym, not because I wanted to become some macho alpha male, but because I wanted to feel strong again. I even signed up for a woodworking class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time for. At the garage, I focused on expanding the business. I hired a few more workers, invested in new equipment, and started taking on bigger projects. The work kept me busy, but it also gave me a sense of purpose. Every car I fixed, every customer I helped, was a reminder that I still had something to offer the world. People around town started noticing the change in me. "You seem different, Mark," they'd say. "More confident." And they were right. I wasn't the same man I was when Lisa walked out. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live life on my own terms. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, when I found myself staring at the empty side of the bed and wondering where it all went wrong. I missed the idea of Lisa, the woman I thought I married, the partner I thought I had. But I knew better than to dwell on the past. What's done is done, and there's no use crying over spilled milk. Instead, I focused on the future. I started setting small goals for myself, things like learning a new skill, traveling to a place I'd always wanted to see, or simply spending more time with the kids. Each goal I achieved felt like a victory, a step forward on my journey to reclaim my independence. By the time the divorce was finalized, I was a different man. Lisa got what she deserved, and I kept what mattered most to me: my garage, my family, and my sense of self. I realized that while losing her hurt, it wasn't the end of the world. In fact, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could finally put myself first. So here I am, standing on the other side of a storm that nearly broke me. I'm not the same man I was before, and that's a good thing. I've learned that independence isn't just about standing on your own, It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take it from you. After everything's settled, the divorce, the business, the house, I found myself in a quiet moment of reflection. Sitting in my favorite chair in the living room, I stared out the window at the street where Lisa and I used to watch the kids ride their bikes. It was a scene I had grown used to over the years, but now it looked different. It felt different. I started thinking about loyalty, what it means, how it defines us. For over 20 years, I'd been loyal to Lisa, through good times and bad. I was there when she needed me most, when her parents passed, when she struggled through university, and when we were building a life together from nothing. I gave her everything I had, my love, my time, my support. But loyalty, as I've learned, has to go both ways. It's not enough for one person to give and the other to take. A marriage isn't a one-way street. It's a partnership, a team effort. And somewhere along the way, Lisa stopped being my partner. She started looking for something or someone else to fill a void that I didn't even know existed. I asked myself over and over, could I have done something differently? Could I have seen the signs sooner, stopped her from slipping away? Maybe. Maybe not. The truth is, people change. Sometimes they grow together and sometimes they grow apart. And in our case, Lisa chose to grow in a direction that didn't include me. That realization hurt. It still does. But what hurt even more was the way she dismissed me, as if all those years of loyalty and sacrifice meant nothing. You're not the kind of man I can take to those parties. Those words echoed in my head like a bad song stuck on repeat. I couldn't shake them, no matter how hard I tried. But then, I started thinking about everything I'd done for her, for us. I thought about the nights I worked late at the garage to pay for her tuition, the days I spent teaching the kids how to ride their bikes, the countless sacrifices I made to give her the life she wanted. And I realized something important. I wasn't the problem. I never was. Lisa didn't leave because I wasn't good enough. She left because she didn't value what we had. She didn't see the beauty in the life we built together, the strength and the loyalty I gave her. And that's not on me. That's on her. As I sat there, I also thought about loss. Losing Lisa felt like losing a part of myself. For so many years we were a team. I couldn't separate my life from hers, and when she walked away, it felt like a piece of me went with her. But as painful as that loss was, it taught me something valuable. You can't hold on to someone who doesn't want to stay. And sometimes, letting go is the only way to find yourself again. I won't lie, there are moments when I still miss her. Not the Lisa she became, but the Lisa I married. The one who laughed at my corny jokes, who cheered me on when the garage was just a dream, who made me feel like the luckiest man in the world. I miss her, but I know she's gone. That woman doesn't exist anymore. Now I'm focused on moving forward. I've learned to find joy in the little things. A cup of coffee in the morning, a job well done at the garage, a phone call from Emma or Lucas. These moments remind me that life goes on, even after heartbreak. And while the pain of losing Lisa will always be a part of my story, it doesn't define me. I've also learned to forgive, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and resentment only weighs you down, and I refuse to let her choices drag me down any further. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go of the hold the past has on you. And that's what I've done. I've let go. Looking back, I see the cracks in our marriage that I was too blind or too trusting to notice. But I don't regret the life we had together. I don't regret the love I gave her or the family we built. Those were real and they mattered, even if she couldn't see it. As for the future, I'm not sure what it holds. Maybe I'll meet someone new, maybe I won't. Either way, I know I'll be okay. Because I've learned that loyalty starts with yourself. It's about staying true to who you are, even when the people around you don't. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Starting over at 55 isn't easy, but I wasn't about to let my life stop because of Lisa's choices. After the divorce was finalized, I stood on my porch one evening, staring at the sunset, and made a promise to myself. I would rebuild my life. Not for her, not for anyone else, but for me. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. The first step was getting back to what I loved. My garage. That place was more than just a business. It was my sanctuary, my pride. I threw myself into my work, not just fixing cars, but expanding the business. I upgraded my equipment, added a couple of new bays, and even brought in some younger mechanics to train. Teaching them reminded me of where I started, and it felt good to give back in that way. The garage thrived, and so did I. But it wasn't just about the work. I realized that for years, I'd been so focused on taking care of others, Lisa, the kids, the house, that I'd forgotten to take care of myself. So I started making small changes. I joined a gym, not to become a bodybuilder or anything, but to feel strong again, to take control of my health. I started eating better, sleeping more, and even picked up a new hobby, woodworking. Woodworking was something I'd always been curious about but never had the time for. I took a beginner's class at the local community center and fell in love with it. There's something about shaping a piece of raw wood into something beautiful and functional that just feels right. It gave me a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time. I also made an effort to reconnect with Emma and Lucas. They were busy with their own lives, Emma finishing university and Lucas playing gigs with his band, but they always made time for me. Emma would call me every evening, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to ask for advice. Lucas, being the free spirit he is, would drop by the garage unannounced, guitar slung over his shoulder, and offer to help out for a few hours. Those moments with them were my lifeline, a reminder that no matter what happened with Lisa, I still had my family. Of course, there were hard days too. There were nights when the house felt unbearably quiet, when I'd sit in my chair and stare at the empty side of the bed, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. But those moments didn't last as long as they used to. Over time, I learned to fill the silence with things that brought me joy. Music, books, the hum of a car engine in the garage. Slowly but surely, I found my rhythm again. I also started making new connections. I joined a local group of small business owners who met once a month to share ideas and support each other. It was refreshing to talk to people who understood the challenges and rewards of running your own business. They weren't just colleagues, they became friends. One of them, a woman named Carol, ran a bakery down the street. She was kind, funny, and as no-nonsense as they come. We'd grab coffee after meetings and talk about everything from work to life to the best way to bake a pie crust. Not that I know much about baking. It wasn't romantic, at least not yet, but it was nice to have someone to talk to, someone who didn't see me as just Mark the mechanic or Mark the divorced guy. Looking back, I realized that losing Lisa, as painful as it was, gave me a chance to rediscover myself. For years, I'd been defined by my roles: husband, father, provider. But now, I was finding out who Mark really was. And while I wasn't sure what the future held, I knew one thing. I was ready for it. The garage, my kids, my new hobbies, my friends, they all became pieces of a new life I was building, one step at a time. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Now here I am, standing on the other side of it all. It's been a long road, full of heartbreak, anger, and more lessons than I ever thought I'd need at this stage in my life. But you know what? I'm still standing. And I'm proud of that. Losing Lisa was tough. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of memories, gone in the blink of an eye. Or at least, that's how it felt at first. But as I've come to realize, those years weren't wasted. They taught me what loyalty means, what love is supposed to look like, and most importantly, what it isn't.